Number one with the Mets, I give David Stearns a lot of credit for the creative nature in which he approaches MLB trade deadline. Protected the top 15, 16 prospects in his farm system. Went out there, added Zuber, added Brazel, added Maton, Stanek, Jesse Winker, Paul Blackburn. Now, I mean, were the Mets going out there, and I give them credit for this. Number one, they needed to revamp the bullpen. They've done absolutely that. A big key is going to be for this Met team, and we've been saying it for a while right here on WFAN, is that, Edwin Diaz is going to have to go out there and regain his form. And slowly but surely, he's starting to do that right before our very eyes. We know that the lineup is ridiculously good. Despite the way that they played last two games and the lack of productivity last two games over the weekend against the Atlanta Braves, we've seen them come back to life once again, especially game one against the Minnesota Twins. So the lineup was not really all that big of an issue. The starting rotation became an issue because of Kodai Senga. Would you have liked the Mets to go out there and attack? Yeah, the answer to that is yes. Because if you're a Met fan, you don't care about 10 years from now. You don't care about 5 years from now. You're showing up out at Citi Field. The emotion is coming into play. The Mets have not won a World Series since 1986. This team is 11 games under the 500 mark at one point on May the 30th. And here we are sitting here latter part of the month of July, and they're in the thick of the wild card race in the National League. So you're saying to yourself, I don't care about, the Scott sprained UCL. I don't care about the calf injury now with Kodai Senga. I want this Met team to go out there and go out and deal and trade from that farm system and go out there and add an upper echelon starter, whether it be a Blake Snell, which would have cost you, some prospects also. He's got money coming his way, too. With the San Francisco Giants, Snell did not get moved, whether it be with the Tigers. Obviously, Crochet with the Chicago White Sox minimized his marketplace because of the demands that he made looking for a new contract should he pitch in the postseason, so he's still a member of the dreadful Chicago White Sox. But he'd like the Mets go out there and add one of those upper echelon starters to pair up with Luis Severino, because right now you can't guarantee that you're ever going to see Kodai Senga back at all, even though the Mets are hopeful that they'll see him come October and the playoffs, should they qualify for the playoffs. But with all that being said, and I understand that, I think David Stearns hinted at his approach when he met with the media yesterday. When Stearns comes out and tells you, however way it looked, paraphrasing here, however way it looked, however way we got there, we thought coming into the year that we were going to be a playoff contender, and that's exactly what we are. Now, the question for Stearns would be this. Having watched this team for the sustained success that we've seen here since June the 1st, as they have played as one of the best teams in all of Major League Baseball, do the expectations then change? Take the emotional aspect out of it. You look at it from an analytic point of view, from a baseball point of view. When you look at this Met team, as you've had Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, and others going out there at different times telling you, the management, the guys running this team like Stearns and Cohen and company, go out there and add to this team. Now, they did. They added 4 relievers. They added a left-handed outfielder, and they added a depth starter piece in Blackburn coming over from the Oakland Athletics. Is that enough to put this team over the top? I think Stearns is looking at this as a scenario of, listen, we're happy we're here. We thought we'd be here. It's not a scenario of that we thought we'd be a competitive team, compete for a playoff spot. That's exactly what we are. It's still a wait-and-see approach. This is not the year, especially with the prices being as exorbitant as they were, that we're going to go all in. And I think that was the message to Met fans out there. Listen, we've addressed our biggest weakness. They have. They've added 4 relievers. We've been screaming to the high heavens about the Mets bullpen being absolutely dreadful and terrible, and the Mets went out there and they added them. Now, were they upper echelon caliber relief pitchers? Not to that extent. Some better than others. But were they going out there and paying the king's ransom for a Tanner Scott? No, they weren't. Would that have been fun to see? For sure. But it was clearly a seller's market when it came to 6 o'clock last night in the MLB trade deadline. And I think the Mets dipped the toe, addressed the needs that they need to address, satisfied the team, appeased the fan base to a certain extent, addressed the biggest need, and they'll go from here. But you do know this, the strength of this team here moving forward, should the Mets be a wild card team in the National League, is obviously going to be this starting lineup. And they're going to have to continue to produce. Nimmo, Lindor, run through the litany. Throw in Winker, a guy coming off the bench, spot player in the outfield. Hopefully get Starlin Marte back. The impact of, the rejuvenated McNeil, Pete Alonso. I know Alvarez dealing with a little bit of an injury. Obviously, the third baseman, Vientos, has been a wonderkin this year. A guy that was, handled very, very poorly by the previous management and Billy Epler. But that's the approach of Stearns. I think I expected the Mets to do a little bit more, but what it shows you is a couple things. They believed in this team to an extent, and Stearns is running it. Because you best believe, as Cohen is watching the ballpark more filled now than it was earlier in the season, as this team has been a fun team to watch, whether it be the players-only meeting, Grimace, everything that we've thrown into the mix here for the Mets this season. The fans have bought in. They enjoy watching this team. They can't wait for the next Met game. You best believe that if Steve Cohen had his way, he'd be a lot more aggressive than he was, but it shows you that David Stearns has the power and the control that he wants. And obviously, that's why he's here, because Steve Cohen believes in the vision of David Stearns. You might not like it. They address the needs. Did they go out there and go to the top of the marketplace? They didn't. Neither did the Yankees. You want to look at teams that are, quote-unquote, all in across Major League Baseball. Look at the San Diego Padres. The Padres basically traded wherever their farm system ranking is, and I know they've dealt a lot from that farm system. They traded 12 of their top 15 prospects in their farm system. They're gone. They're all in. How about what the Los Angeles Dodgers have been able to do? Turn it over. They had 7, 8, 9 guys. I started to lose track. Every time you looked up on social media, the Dodgers were making another trade. That's a team that's all in. You look at the Yankees. Listen, Chisholm has been unbelievable. And it was a great game last night down in Philadelphia. And the Yankees, if you want to wake up on this Wednesday morning and say the Yankees are back, they found themselves once again. They've won 4 straight. You look at Chisholm in 3 games as a Yankee. He's hit 4 home runs. No other Yankee has done in the history of the franchise. He's not hitting leadoff. Today, he's hitting, I think he's hitting 5th in the lineup. The Yankees gambled on talent. I was on the airwaves on Saturday when that deal went down, and honestly, I like the trade. The Yankees needed to do something. They needed to, Cashman needed to wake up. They needed to go out and address some kind of a need. Add a positional player. Give this team a little bit of life. A positional player that's a little bit different, and that's exactly what Jazz Chisholm is. He's got some speed. He's obviously got power. We've seen that. Can play multiple positions. He has no experience at third base, and he's playing a little third. And his impact initially has been staggering. It really has. Who exactly expected Chisholm in his first 3 games to be exactly what he has been? It has been remarkable. And that's a credit to Cashman and company. Now, when it comes to the bullpen, Mark Leiter Jr., De Los Santos. You're picking up the scraps of another team that's going for it in De Los Santos, who struggled with his fastball this year, but the Yankees feel like they can turn it around. Leiter Jr., thrown into the mix last night, fresh off the plane. You like it. Worked himself out of a big-time jam. Showed you a little bit of emotion. He's a swing-and-miss reliever. Yankee fans, myself included, have been screaming and hollering for this Yankee team to have a swing-and-miss reliever back into the bullpen, and that's exactly what Leiter is. Now, is he that caliber pitcher? No. He's not, but I think he helps. But the Yankees are going to bank on some of these other guys getting back, whether it be in Hamilton, Efros. That's what the Yankees are going to bank on, some of these other relievers coming back to this team and helping out that bullpen. But did the Yankees, when it comes to relief work, did they address the most glaring need? No, they did not. And that's the biggest issue of all I have, because tell me exactly this. Right now, as the Yankees have won 4 in a row, in a big-time spot, do you exactly trust Clay Holmes to get the job done? What are we up to, 8 blown saves so far this season for Clay Holmes, despite him being an all-star down in Arlington for the American League? And Holmes is a nice guy. You all walk up into the Yankee clubhouse. Clay Holmes is a guy you can approach, you can talk to. He'll talk about his struggles. He'll give you a good interview. Clay Holmes is a really nice guy, affable, likable, all those things. Easy guy to root for. But in terms of being a big-time closer, he leaves you wanting. And that's my biggest issue of all when you look at the Yankees. Did they address the areas of need in Leiter and De Los Santos? Yes. Did they address an area of need when you look at Jazz Chisholm? Yes. The guy that is now playing third base, we know can play a little bit of second, has played center field with the Miami Marlins. And Chisholm is a perfect case in point where you bank on athleticism, you bank on talent, you bring him from a losing situation and put him into a winning situation where all the focus is not on him, and it wasn't, and you're watching him thrive early on. Now, is this the player that we're going to get for the rest of the regular season? No. But it's a nice hello, and it's a refreshing one. And this Yankee team, outside of Gleyber, with Verdugo, is starting to come to life. Now, Boone's still got to make some adjustments here when it comes to this team. DJ LeMahieu can't be a defensive replacement at first base. He can't field. I mean, how many times do we need to see it? I understand that Ben Rice, they're taking him out of the game. I'd rather lean on Ben Rice late in games than DJ LeMahieu. And what I said on Saturday rings true this Wednesday is this. The acquisition of Chisholm, as everyone gets on Gleyber Torres from not moving to second and third and balking at that idea, where you're having Chisholm going out there and say, listen, I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be away from the losing Miami Marlins, happy to be a New York Yankee. I don't care where you ask me to play. I'll go out there and play. But the bigger impact is this, minimizing the downturn of LeMahieu as a player. That was an area of need for this Yankee team at the MLB trade deadline, and Cashman addressed it. But you still wake up on this Wednesday. Yankees didn't go out there. They didn't go all in on a Tanner Scott, who ended up in San Diego with the Padres. They didn't go all in and adding another power reliever back into the bullpen in a year in which this team was put together to win a World Series. With the impending free agency of Juan Soto, we're not going to get into the idea of exactly where he's going to end up following this season, but let's be realistic here. The pressure was on Cashman and company, but he protected Dominguez, didn't expect him to go. He protected Spencer Jones. He protected his upper echelon starters. He addressed areas of need, but the Yankees, did they dive into the deep end of the pool and the upper echelon talent? They did not. Did they address one of the biggest glaring needs outside of this lineup and lack of depth, which he did with Chisholm? He did not back end. They tried to get Flaherty. They didn't like his medicals. He ended up with the Dodgers. But it was an interesting report from Kenny Rosenthal that they had a deal in place. So it's not like the Yankees were not willing to make a big-time move, not willing to address the starting rotation. They were. They eyeballed Flaherty from the Tigers. They didn't like his medicals. They had a deal in place. He ends up with the Los Angeles Dodgers. But still, the biggest need of all was the back end of the bullpen. They got a swing and miss guy, Mark Leiter Jr. Did they get a guy that provides a little bit of insurance for Clay Holmes? They did not. 888-808-1019 is your number to call